You're listening to the All Night Society, an actual play podcast brought to you by Queen's Court Games. Well, tonight, the coterie will find themselves at the top of Chicago, metaphorically, literally. In the days following your meeting with the prince, in which you were rightfully rewarded for your service to the city, each of you received a formal invitation with instructions to meet in the lobby of John Hancock Plaza on North Michigan Avenue. The date was precise, next Saturday evening at 10 o'clock sharp. Now, previously, being punctual hasn't been a concern for everyone in the group, but given the circumstances of the last week, I imagine you're all taking timeliness a bit more seriously these days. Once again, the court has called to interrupt the ebb and flow of your nightly existence. Once again, you find yourself in mixed company. And I wonder, as you come together in the glass and steel abomination of the John Hancock Plaza, what's on your mind? Because as far as we were concerned, when we left that park on the north side, when we left the prince's office, you were done seeing one another. And now it appears that is not the case.
Admittedly, I was a little, perhaps nervous. Cautious? One of those words, for when I received summons from the prince once more. Maybe Genji's had a point. Maybe he really does think I'm his little doggy or something. But upon being reunited with my new coterie, there's a sense of maybe hope. Ivy, I wouldn't say I trust. I'm familiar with her, at the very least acclimated to how she tends to be in company. Schmendrick is strange, but she's proven herself helpful and possesses a strange sort of kindness. So as we stand in front of this massive, sky-reaching building, I look to my company fondly, a nod.
I'm curious, for someone whose fashion senses haven't been updated in 2 centuries, what does Rebecca wear to this kind of meeting?
Last I checked, there wasn't a dress code. I'd be wearing what I usually do, a dusty, well-worn flannel, paired with some old tough Levi's, and of course my ever-trustworthy brown leather steel-toed boots. Kind of outfit you expect to be on the trail in. You never know when tonight could take a turn, and I want to be prepared for it.
Of course, you don't want to be caught wearing high heels when, shit hits the fan.
They could make a good improvised weapon, but I'd be more worried about balancing them myself.
Does Ivy know how to wear a pair of heels?
Oh, of course I do. It's not my preferred shoe of choice. I would definitely pick boots and Converse over heels any day of the week, but I can absolutely rock a pair of heels. I clean up very nicely.
Well, when you say that, I think, yes, you can clean up a lab, or yes, you can clean up a gory mess in an alley, but that says more about me than it does about you.
Kinda, yeah.
So what's on Ivy's mind as she is liberated from the chantry once again by a princely summons?
I mean, the last time I saw the prince, I asked to be remembered, right? I wanted to be known by the Camarilla of Chicago as more than just a Tremere, and my presence here kind of indicated that that might be the case. But then I see Schmendrick and I see Rebecca, and I think, well, clearly this has nothing to do with status and everything to do with doing more for the prince. Uh, uh, uh it's it's kind of a double-edged sword, right? Because on the one hand, I'm just like, sweet, the prince is recognizing my abilities and I'm going to be able to make my way up this political ladder. And on the other hand, oh, these two are here too. Cool. That being said, that feeling towards them has nothing to do with them as kindred, just the situation in general. I had a fun enough time chatting with Schmendrick after we left the prince's office the other night, and Rebecca obviously is a competent fighter, so I definitely could be paired with worse kindred. It's just a general sense of, oh.
Mm-hmm. Schmendrick, do you have any backhanded compliments running through your mind as you join the coterie for the evening?
Uh, Not really. I guess I'm a little bit troubled because I do have this particular way of doing things. My life is always kind of cloistered, and the prince seems to be really intent on disrupting that. But I suppose that being lost in your own mind for too long is not exactly the healthiest. And the interruptions that are growing in frequency have actually brought some excitement to my life. Not that my life needs more excitement.
I have to know, what did the prince interrupt? What was Schmendrick going to do tonight until she got this letter?
I was making some headway on finding a new haven for myself, and that's been a project unto itself. It's just a lot of data analyzing at this point.
Well, I'm sorry you had to be peeled away from the glow and the numbers and all the pretty letters.
Just this once I'll forgive it. Because there's this certain comfort to seeing the faces that I had experienced a rather monumental moment with. So when I see Rebecca and Ivy, I would actually greet the two of them fondly. Handshakes, how do you do's, all that jazz. But I'm also kind of worried. The fact that we are together again means that the prince may have something dangerous in store or something equally crazy as getting the Lasombra into the Camarilla.
It is kind of strange that the two vampires you think least likely to kill you, you only see when it involves situations where you face mortal danger.
Yeah, that's not an association I want to have with them. So, hmm, let's not make a habit of that.
I'll see what I can do about that. Will the three of you share your introductions, your catching up, your small talk? And it's only a few minutes before Damien, Sheriff of Chicago, and increasingly familiar face, collects this trio and escorts you past a bank of security elevators in the rear of the plaza. 40 seconds and 95 floors later, you're being ushered past the host at one of Chicago's most iconic restaurants. The signature room and its accompanying cocktail bar are known for the swanky elegance of their Art Deco interior and their mastery of traditional American fare, and the crowds of tourists who gather along their windows for a commanding view of the Chicago skyline. They say on a clear day, you can see 60 miles in any direction, a whole 5 states. But you are not tourists, and the restaurant is not your destination. There are 2 floors left to go in your journey, the end of which finds you seated with 4 other kindred around a grand, heavy ebony conference table, surrounded by thick, drawn curtains and dark mahogany paneled walls. Damien stays only long enough to wave you inside, remaining on the other side of the door as it shuts with a heavy clunk. Now, this is not Kevin Jackson's building, nor is it Kevin Jackson's boardroom, but the kindred whose eyes follow you into the room as you take your seats are his government. You see Annabelle, the sumptuous Toreador, Alan Sovereign, the taciturn and weaselly Ventru, and Khalid, the circumspect recluse Nosferatu. Or, you know, the honorable members of the Court of Chicago, if you prefer formalities. Prince Jackson lights up as you arrive. It's clear he was expecting you, and judging by the looks on the other faces in the room, your presence is neither an interruption nor an inconvenience. Mr. Jackson beckons you, invites you to take a seat, and join his table. Ah, there they are, my 3 heroes. I assume you're familiar with everyone else here. Annabelle, Mr. Sovereign, Khalid.
In name, if not personally.
I'll give each of the people a nod in turn as they're introduced and say, yet to meet some of you. It's a pleasure.
It's an honor to meet you all. I assure you, whatever transpires here today, I will do to the best of my ability. Best to start off formal, right? We'll be dealing with these folks quite a bit.
Oh, no, you can relax. There's nothing on the agenda for the evening. The 4 of us were just discussing the changes that'll be happening in the city. Mr. Sovereign, I believe, refers to it as the formulation of a coherent and unified strategy for the assimilation of the Lasombra. But we're going to have a hard time fitting that on the flyers.
Oh, yeah, that's a mouthful. But with all due respect, Prince Jackson, what does that have to do with us?
Ah, that is the very question that Mr. Sovereign asked. The way I see it, the three of you have had more experience with the Lasombra who will be living here than anyone else in the city. You spent quite a lot of time with Miss Van Burst and Mr. Malenkov. You have a valuable perspective on the ground intelligence.
I give Annabelle a quick little glance as Prince Jackson says this, given our previous conversation. It makes me feel good that I've got a bit of a backing from the prince as far as my experiences with the Lasombra go. Maybe that feeds into Annabelle's perspective a little bit in the future.
I don't really bat an eye at his statement. He's right. I have experience with Lasombra, even beyond Melenkov and Sierra, so I just tap my fingers together and remain silent for the moment.
That's true. You had a bit of a tussle with the Magisters in New York, as I remember.
That's right. For many years.
Rebecca, on the other hand, you'd seen like one other vampire for 2 centuries.
Right, and my on-hands experience with the Lasombra might be a little literal, but I'm quite sure nobody needs me to rehash war stories at the table. It's a little curious that he thinks us experienced enough, definitely as a combined force.
Well, with pleasantries exchanged, the conversation turns to various options that have been floated around by members of the court. Prince Jackson catches you up just a bit. Yes, well, these 3, I believe, are most on my side about things to come. Mr. Newberry, of course, we expect to continue to make life as difficult as possible. And no offense to your elders, he looks to Rebecca, but Miss Hernandez has very little patience for anything aside from the Garot problem.
I would nod at that. It is a very pressing issue, and one that, of course, requires my attention as well.
Well, I would hope that the Gangrel are just as capable of chewing gum and walking at the same time as the rest of us.
Wouldn't be here for as long as I have been if I wasn't.
I chuckle a little bit.
What's so funny, Ivy?
Oh, nothing. Just Gangrel walking, chewing gum. I just love it so much.
The prince continues. Well, their indifference or obstinance aside, the most serious proposal we've had so far comes from Critias. He believes that all things can be solved through his eternal academy, as if we'll be able to get the Lasombra enrolled as students in a Camarilla school.
I mean, I know it wasn't a condition of them joining the Camarilla and allowing them entrance into the city, but it's not like your school is secret. I don't think it's that big of an ask.
Honestly, I was under the impression that any new kindred into Chicago had to go through the school. I did so.
Annabelle takes this moment to chime in. Oh, it's not a question of whether all kindred, would benefit from Critias's instruction. It's more a question of whether or not the Lasombra would tolerate such an ask. Some might find it insulting to be remanded to a, shall we say, remedial education. And given the tenuous and unsteady nature of our relationship so far, there are those of us who wonder if that kind of antagonism is worth the benefit.
Well, I personally would insist on education of some sort, whether it be the school or not. They can't just walk into Chicago and be let loose saying, hey, you're Camarilla now. They need some sort of guidance.
Absolutely. I mean, as Sabat, they had their own ways, but if they want to join the Camarilla and be part of the Camarilla, they need to learn what it means to be Camarilla.
Khaled sneers. Oh, I'm certain they already know the traditions. After all, how could they flagrantly violate them without knowing that which makes us tick? Ultimately, every vampire conducts violence of some kind at some point. It's a very simple thing to tell them which kinds we allow and which kinds we don't. At the very least, there are cities aplenty without such kinds of educational programs that manage to do just fine.
You don't believe it would be worthwhile then? At all?
I didn't say that. I just believe that there's a difference between a wise and experienced Lasombra joining our city, as opposed to someone who's just woken up in the back of a hotel room with a strange hunger in their throat.
then perhaps the curriculum is adjusted. You don't have to take a full 16-week course if you can just take an 8-week course, right? We change it around a little bit. It's not, hey, you're a vampire, what now? It's, hey, welcome to the Camarilla, here's our rules.
Prince Jackson chuckles. Ah, an associate's degree in etiquette instead of a whole bachelor's program.
Exactly.
At the very least, they could do with some mentorship, guidance, whether that comes in the form of education or otherwise.
While I can agree with this, I have a feeling that Critias is not going to adjust his curriculum for the associate's degree.
Annabelle smirks. Oh, Critias hasn't adjusted anything about himself in 2,000 years. I consider it a miracle of the modern era that he's not still wandering around in a toga.
This is kind of an unprecedented situation. It makes sense that we would have to change a little bit.
Khalid responds. Change isn't an area where kindred usually excel.
No, obviously not. We have found ourselves in the middle of change. By allowing the Lasombra to enter the Camarilla, we have invited change. It stands to reason that we would change in other ways to help the first change along.
Something about that rubs Alan Sovereign the wrong way, and he looks down his glasses at you, thin lips pursed. Miss LaRue, is it? This isn't an assimilation in both directions. The Lasombra were invited to join the Camarilla. Changing our own perspectives or strictures was never part of the equation.
I'm not asking us to change our entire outlook on everything. I'm saying craft a curriculum for the new guys. Leave the old, add the new. You're not changing everything completely. You're just building on what you already have.
Annabelle takes the opportunity to diffuse what she sees might be a sticky situation. Well, one of us has had to deal with more change than any of the others, and we have an expert in assimilation, as it were. Rebecca, what do you think?
Change is necessary, but it doesn't require an entire infrastructural change. Rather, being prepared to handle it doesn't require us to change anything about ourselves, but being familiar that the difference about to approach us. Otherwise, we'll crumble.
The Seneschal cuts deep into the heart of that issue. It's your opinion, then, that the changes enforced upon your people have been fine? That nothing would be better had you been left to continue your own traditions, cultural mores, purely without the influence of outsiders?
I was saying nothing of that, even though I do believe it would have been so, but that change happened regardless. We survived because we were willing to adapt.
And I'm saying the Camarilla doesn't need to adapt. But in any case, I've said my piece. And unlike the others here, I won't be casting a vote in the matter.
As this conversation is happening around me, I'm sort of talking out loud, I guess, thinking to myself, well, my sire taught me everything I know, and that's, something not all kindred get, which is kind of unfortunate. She was really pivotal. The school's a no-go, so what other options do we have?
You have any ideas?
Schmendrick makes an excellent point about having an older kindred as a point of mentorship, someone who's experienced with the Camarilla's traditions, teaching them the basics of immortality. After all, I spent many of my years with my sire, Silas. Perhaps not a formal school, but a volunteer program of sorts. Older kindred, or at the very least more established Camarilla kindred, taking the new ones under their wings, preparing them for a new life in the Camarilla.
Can I ask you honestly, Rebecca, how you expect to weed out the people who are volunteering in good faith and who are volunteering because they know that they'll be able to get close to a Lasombra that they may not want in the city at all?
I would hope that the court would have some ability to weed out good faith versus bad faith.
I hate that you both make good points. So where's the middle ground? We'd have to carefully select mentors, but that's going to leave us with too few, perhaps. Granted, that all depends on how many of the Lasombra are able to bring in a Sabbat elder for their sacrifices. So maybe that will take more of a trickle approach.
The prince shakes his head. No, I like where you're going, but you're thinking too small. Ideally, we're going to be setting up a program that other cities can emulate. The number of Lasombra who are going to join the Camarilla extends far beyond the number who will end up in Chicago. Annabelle follows up. And you won't have to leave Chicago to find people ready to complain when a host of Tremere sign up for the program. When the gangrel aren't represented, God forbid the anarchs get involved. Finding a number of kindred that everyone in the city is willing to allow into this kind of program. I don't like our odds. Prince Jackson falls in, but there are no bad ideas. At the very least, it's something we can put on the list, right? Then there's a murmur of agreement on that point. And that, more or less, is how the next 10, 20, 30 minutes proceeds. Ideas being batted around, little bits of banter. Alan Sovereign remains serious. Annabelle playing the middle ground. Khalid skeptical on the border of cynicism. And Prince Jackson absorbing all the knowledge, sorting ideas into good and bad, wondering what he can bring in front of the court. The deliberations only last so long, though, before they're interrupted by the thundering hammer of fists on the door. You hear a deep masculine voice, no doubt one of the goons who's been dominated into defending this meeting, insisting, "Ma'am, it's a private meeting. You can't enter." While a familiar voice screams from the other side that she will not be denied the audience. You've spent enough time with Sierra to know that voice anywhere, and you recognize a particular tone when she reaches deep into her vampiric arsenal and merely commands, "Step aside." In the next moment, the door swings open, an outraged Sierra stomping into the room on dangerous heels. Prince Jackson looks ready to come to his feet, asking, "What is the meaning of this?" Sierra only stares daggers at the man, crossing the room to hurl open the curtains and reveal the red-orange glow of a billowing inferno dancing into the night. This is the meaning of things.
The sight of the flames causes me to sit up out of my chair, hands on the table.
The moment the flames come into my sight, I am already up, hairs at the back of my neck. Fight, flee, whatever comes first.
Well, you're safe enough in that the fire appears to be a dozen blocks away or so. A 40-story hotel, luxuriant and also ablaze. It's hard to tell from a distance, but at least 20 floors of the place are burning in some degree or another. And the collective light of so much modern construction set ablaze might be the closest you've come to seeing daylight since you changed lifestyles.
I stare out the window at the fire in shock before looking at Sierra. Her reaction is definitely more intense than I would expect. "I'm sorry, Sierra. It's a fire, obviously an enormous fire, but I don't understand the significance of this."
To start, the fact that you can't tell the significance of a cataclysmic once-in-a-decade fire sweeping through your city has me asking questions about whether or not you belong in this room. But that's for another time, because at the moment, the most prurient piece of information is that that is my hotel.
My eyes fly wide. Oh shit.
Oh my god.
The news is at least enough to bring Prince Jackson to his feet. Annabelle seems to have lost her generally flirty, dismissive glow, wearing a very serious look. Khalid's eyes are wide, reading into the future. He knows trouble when he sees it. He asks, perhaps calmer than one would expect for the situation, "How long ago did this happen?" And Sierra, almost snarling, 20 minutes. It took 20 minutes for all of this to go wrong. One moment, I'm enjoying a new exhibition of Asian art at Northwestern University. The next moment, my driver's pulling me out of the room to tell me that my flagship hotel is now a barbecue. Now, thankfully, it's only a short drive over here to find you all. The only positive news of which seems to be that you were all too busy lounging to have possibly been involved. Prince Jackson stiffens. "I assure you, Miss Van Burris, no one in this room is responsible for what's happening this evening."
Why do you think that anybody's involved and it wasn't just a freak fire?
The Tremere have pretty good memories, right?
Yes.
So I want you to reach back into your big, pretty brain and tell me the last time you remember a skyscraper going up in flames in the United States.
That's why I said a freak fire.
A freak fire that happens to coincide with a vote to allow myself and my brethren into the city to live among you. A vote which was hotly contested, and a number of kindred in the city vehemently disagree with.
The timing's all too coincidental. It's nothing short of a statement, and a swift one at that.
Prince Jackson is displeased by her accusations. Yes, coincidence is fine, and I'm the last person in the room who will underestimate what kindred are capable of, but surely you cannot expect us to take action based on the idea that a kindred might be responsible. Sierra is prepared for this. She says, no, I have much more evidence than that.
I suspected repercussions for bringing in the Lasombra, but I didn't expect them so soon. And not like this.
And nor to such volume either. It's nothing short of pure fury.
Prince Jackson asks, yes, then if you have evidence, please, by all means, present it. The four of us are more capable than anyone in this city in seeing the matter resolved, so if you have information... Sierra cuts him off. She yells across the room, inviting her associate to enter. A man in an immaculate Italian suit comes in, holding a briefcase. Everyone is curious enough to know what's inside it. There's no need to ask them to open it. Obviously, that's the next move. The gentleman sets it on the desk, where everyone can see, opening it up to reveal a laptop computer inside. Queued up on screen appears to be surveillance footage from the hotel. He presses a key. It leaps into motion. You see a hunched, twisted-looking figure crossing the lobby, ignored by every last one of the mortals around him. It cuts to a feed overlooking a security desk, where two guards are hard at work, save for the fact that they appear not to notice this figure carrying a duffel bag into a back stairwell. In the next moment, you're looking down a hallway. In the bottom left-hand corner, it's labeled Floor 30. He carries the bag into a room. 3 minutes pass. He exits. And now, for the first time, he's facing the camera. And everyone in this room recognizes the face of Charles Dawson.
Oh, Charles.
Oh, fuck.
Him? Really? He couldn't have. But there he is.
Is that evidence enough, Prince Jackson? Sierra spits. Now, no one stays prince for long without the ability to hold their tongue when necessary, and in this moment, Prince Jackson knows he has to measure his words very carefully. I see. Well, yes, this is quite... And he trails off.
Wait. When did this fire start and when did Charles leave this room?
Sierra transitions in this moment away from rage into clear focus. It's a very Lasombra thing. The ability to set aside emotions when a task is at hand. Mr. Dawson entered the building 14 minutes before the fire. He left the room 3 minutes before the first alarms went off, 7 of them. 6 on floors that we reserved for kindred guests, and 1 in a basement utility corridor, adjacent the room where our security systems are housed.
As she's saying this, I'm quickly tapping it away on my phone, and I'm also going to pointedly ask her, can I have building layout for your hotel?
I don't keep the blueprints in my purse. I'm sorry.
That's fair.
There's no way that this footage was doctored, right?
The Diamond Yama takes the privacy and security of its guests incredibly secret, Miss LaRue. It is no more likely that this footage is doctored than the wards cast in your chantry are defective.
Oh, no. I trust that.
Khalid takes a moment. Well, then the plan is simple, right? We find Dawson, bring him in, interrogate him as necessary. Annabelle's nodding along. Alan Sovereign looks over to the prince. I can summon the hounds. Prince Jackson has paused a moment. He's shaking his head. No, not this early. If I send Damien and the hounds rounding up all the people at Charles's bar, it's only going to be a matter of time before people in the city put 2 and 2 together. I've already got a fire blighting the sky. I don't need riots on the streets, kindred or otherwise. If there were a way to bring him in quietly, great. But given the circumstances, I don't imagine he'd be willing to pay us a visit of his own volition.
Prince Jackson, for every moment we spend speaking and deciding how to bring him in, he could be squirreling himself away in some far distant part of the city. I've centuries of experience tracking under my belt. I could find him, quietly, before the trail grows cold.
Annabelle is the first to respond. Yes, I'm sure your capacity for tracking is admirable, but it also far outstrips your political qualifications. The three of you are already very close to this matter. I don't know that the court, she turns to Prince Jackson, would consider you neutral arbiters of the situation. Khalid nods. Yes, you weren't exactly discreet in your handling of the vote. I would hate to be in the room when people start throwing accusations of whose side you're on.
No, that's absolutely right. We can't handle this not in that capacity.
Prince Jackson is nodding along. Right, at least not the three of you alone. We'd need to find a way to make it some kind of commission, something that everybody could get behind. He looks to Sierra. It's my understanding that you trust these three kindred? Sierra nods. And while you would never have brought any Lasombra into the city before the vote, I'm sure in the last few days someone has arrived who you might consider a qualified agent in these matters. Sierra nods. Says, all right. It's a start, at least. Why don't the three of you make yourself comfortable in the bar downstairs? Sierra, get your person on the phone. We might be able to move tonight.
I nod at the prince and at Sierra and stand up to excuse myself from the room, taking a quick glance at Schmendrick and Rebecca as I go.
I was already standing when Sierra threw open the curtain and revealed the flames. I'd follow quickly in suit. Sooner we're on this, sooner we can get on the trail before it's cold.
I likewise feel a sense of urgency and join my coterie members.
Once we get to the bar, I'll take a seat in a booth and just kind of slump down with a sigh. Oh my goodness, Charles. This is crazy even for a Nosferatu, Schmendrick.
I could see myself lighting a building on fire if I felt I had the need to, but this is...
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. If I had the need to.
If I had the need to.
What possible need could you have to light a building on fire?
Occupation of your territory, and if Charles sees it as such, then perhaps he felt this was the move needed.
Also worth noting, there were people who saw it appropriate to light a building you were on in fire quite recently.
It's true.
Yes, but that was people, right? Like, different.
Listen, I can't think of a scenario right now as to why I would go out and light a building on fire, but if Charles did do this, and I think it's still up in the air because I gotta review some data, if he did it, there has to be a reason for it.
Right. He never struck me as the sort.
No, I mean, he always kind of skeeved me out. So, I mean, I guess I'm not gonna put it in the definitely could not happen pile, but at the same time, I'd like to think that none of the kindred. Well, see, I say that Genghis could absolutely see Genghis lighting a building on fire, but he's an anarch. I expect that.
Without a doubt. But Charles, immediate direct action, destructive action, doesn't seem like his style.
No, also, if you guys remember us talking to him, he knew the Lasombra were coming, or something damn close to that. And the fact that he didn't care then, I don't know, he's either got an amazing poker face, or he didn't care.
I mean, did he not care, or did you just give him enough to have him bide his time? You gave him a lot to have him stay out of it. And now that he's done whatever he wanted to with the data that you gave him, and you guys don't have any sort of agreement about him moving forward, maybe this is what we would have encountered that for. Look, thinking about it, we were almost lit on fire the first night they were in town. Who's to say that Charles didn't have something to do with that? I'm just saying, like, 2 bits of arson dealing with a Lasombra in like a very short amount of time. It's just ticking some boxes right now.
Regardless of what conspiracies we can spin about the true culprit of this, the matter is we'll have to find him first.
Listen, I only gave Charles a little bit of the data I had mined, and that data pointed towards Ventru house flipping. As far as I know, the place we stayed and Sierra's hotel are not Ventru owned.
Well, no, of course Sierra's hotel is not Ventru owned. And the place that we stayed is some random sky hotel, but my point still stands. I'm not blaming him, but working under the assumption that it was, in fact, Charles, because that's what we've been handed right now. If it was Charles, we were attacked in the middle of the day by people who were hired to set us on fire, right? Arson. Charles could not directly be involved, right? Because you had paid him off to not be. And now we have a huge fire in downtown Chicago. Charles on camera inside said hotel with a duffel bag moments before the blaze went up. I'm just saying the two might not be disconnected. Maybe it points in the direction that he is involved.
I mean, it's pretty damning evidence so far, but we don't have any footage of him lighting all the fires or going to each floor or.
As much as I hate to admit it, Ivy's got a point. A lot of dots connecting here, but depends on what the man has to say for himself.
Yeah, I can agree to that.
If there was something in the basement and then 30 floors up, I mean, this could have been a thing that he'd been working on for the last week. Since the Lasombra arrived, waiting until this moment, or waiting until he did whatever he needed to do to make sure that this moment happened. I don't want to say that I completely blame him, that he's 100% guilty. I'm just saying the evidence points that way until we find something to the contrary so far.
Yeah, no, I understand that. 100% I believe if Charles was the culprit, he should face punishment for what he's done. Like, these are people's lives, not just kindred. These are humans that are burning right now thanks to whoever did this. But I need more evidence than this.
Right, the people. We also care about the people. Yes.
You do have to consider that destruction is going to have effects, regardless of whether or not you care about humans.
You know, like hypothetically, if someone in this trio didn't care about humans, just not saying anyone doesn't, just hypothetically.
Yeah, purely, I mean, that's what we're dealing in. Purely hypothetical situations here.
Regardless of where this evidence points, there'll be a lot of folks not going home tonight.
So at this point, I just sort of kick a wall and say, damn it. He gave me no reason to suspect him at any point. Like, we had jovial conversations, and I didn't think he was working against us.
Have you ever watched serial killer documentaries, Schmendrick?
Oh,
I'm a big true crime fan. Absolutely love it, you know? Serial killers, some of them are skeevy, weird, not hugged enough as children. Some of them are so personable. You would never suspect them because, oh my God, such a great person. Just helped out on the weekends at church and like, you know, had all of these wonderful things said about them by all of their neighbors and their friends and their work colleagues. And then turns out they've been dismembering brunette women and burying them in the forest behind their house for decades.
I'm glad you explained that because Charles is definitely the skeevy weird one.
Whether or not, I mean, physically, yes, he is very skeevy and weird, and he does have that. He loves to get under your skin, but he's very charismatic, right? And so many serial killers are.
You're right. He may just have the world's best poker face.
Don't worry, Schmendrick. I don't think any of us saw this coming. I think with the three of us and whoever's going to be joining our little company, we'll be able to bring him back, find out why this happened.
I'm so sorry. I don't think there's any universe in which Charles's face is talked about the best anywhere. I'm just saying.
At Ivy's cutting words, I just chuckle and say, you make me laugh.
I try. Really, it's a defense mechanism, let's be honest. It's either that or we sit in silence until the prince comes and gets us.
Well, God, you've certainly given each other something to think about, haven't you? It might be one of my favorite things about the coterie that whenever the three of you are left to your own devices, you always end up more confused than you were when you started.
It's an art.
Thank you, I think.
I think it comes with the territory, being creatures of shadow and whatnot.
I think it just speaks to all of us that we can have differing opinions that the others haven't thought about, and it just, we're just a good group that way.
Yeah. And then you have to end up reconciling all of those things together into one coherent vision. And I haven't played Mage, but I think that's how you go crazy in that game.
Probably.
In any case, fortune rescues you from further paranoid deliberation. One of the prince's men, you can tell by that look in his eyes of someone whose mind has been completely stripped of its own will, informs you that Mr. Jackson is ready for you, and he leads you back into the room. The prince and his three Primogen look significantly more stressed than they were in the moment before. Sierra has traded her fuming face for her quiet disapproval face. It is obvious that in the time you were gone, very little, if any, progress has been made on issues of courtly importance. Your arrival breaks that tension only long enough for Prince Jackson to hold out a hand, change the topic. All right, welcome back. Here's the plan. We're going to keep Damien and Alexa off the streets for now. The three of you are going to see if you can find Charles before anything else happens, while those of us who are better connected to the mortal world do what we can to keep this as under control as possible. As the senior-most representative of Clan Lasombra in the city, Sierra has insisted that she be allowed to assign one of her own to the case, so you'll be having a friend along for this adventure. He turns the floor to Sierra. Yes, you'll be in the care of an associate of mine, my Legacy. Not that I would expect any of you to do something untoward, but she'll be on hand to ensure that the perception of this investigation is one of fairness and equality between our clans. Worry not. She's more than a commissar or a spy. She also happens to be a gifted investigator, which I expect will become of great use to you in the nights to come. The prince steps in. If you have any complaints or questions, now's the time to raise them. Because once you leave this room, I expect that you'll be perfectly behaved representatives of the court and presenting nothing but full faith and support for its causes. The ground is still very fragile here, and any misstep by any one of us can bring the whole thing crashing down before we manage to build it up. This is also the last time you're going to see Miss Van Burris for a while. On the off chance this was a targeted attack, we can't take the risk of having her struck down by a second, third, or fourth attempt. So if you have any questions for her about what's happened tonight, now's the time.
I don't really have questions, but I do need access to a few things. Building plans, as I said. Security footage beyond what you have given us.
There's an obvious discomfort on Sierra's face. The idea that you need access to electronic records or surveillance footage abuts the well-known disadvantage that comes with Lasombra blood, and there's not really an easy way to talk around your clan's curse. It wouldn't be polite for someone to bring up to Schmendrick's face how hideous it is, and in the same way you're treading on uncertain ground in talking circles around her clan weakness. But Sierra is nothing but composed. Yes, as I told Prince Jackson while you were gone, I will have my people get in contact with his and ensure that the right access, permission, records, anything that can move the investigation along will be made available to you.
I appreciate that.
Sierra, because I have to ask, if this was a targeted attack, is there any reason that Charles would have it in for you specifically?
Mr. Dawson and I have never crossed paths, not in Chicago or anywhere else. If he has any reason to disapprove of the outcome of last week's democratic process, it will be news to me.
Do we know of his last whereabouts at the very least, or areas he frequents? Associates?
The last place any of us saw Charles Dawson was in the hotel. As for his normal haunts, you could try any one of his bars, although I doubt he'd be there if he were in hiding. Aside from that, Nosferatu or Nosferatu. It's unfortunate that our number one suspect is a member of the clan that has the easiest time hiding.
I take a look at Schmendrick and then back at the prince and say, do you know of any Nosferatu that happen to live in the general vicinity of his bars?
For this, Mr. Jackson defers to Khalid, who merely shrugs. Most of my clan make their havens on the west side of town, but Charles is more mobile than most, and it's hard for me to say if he shares proximity with any of my brethren. Unlike the Tremere, we don't make a habit, even among each other, of revealing where we sleep.
So he's mobile, last seen at the hotel. Does he have a friend? Like a close friend?
Khalid shrugs. No, as far as I understand, Mr. Dawson, his relationships are fickle by definition. The only lasting relationship he has is an undying animus for Nathaniel Bordriff, but I can't see how that would have driven his decision this evening. You could check with the others, of course, discreetly. Not every Nosferatu knows every secret, so it's possible there's something I don't know.
What do we do if we happen to find him tonight?
The prince answers. If you can find a way to bring him in peacefully, that would be my preference. If you feel it will come to violence, keep a stakeout on his location. Let Damien and Alexa know.
Hopefully it won't come to that, if we do find him tonight.
And it shouldn't need to be said, but much like Mr. Malenkaw, we would prefer, you see the way that he emphasizes prefer, that you bring him in alive. Torpid if necessary, but under no circumstances should he be put to any unnecessary harm.
Of course, discreet, alive as he is, and as quietly as possible.
That is the spirit, Miss Mitchell, yes. Well, elsewhere in the city, there's a kindred who's about to have a very interesting night. Maya Legacy of Clan Lasombra. In a few moments, you'll be interrupted by one of your trusted associates with a missive from your elder. But before that, what were you up to? What important task is about to be forced onto the back burner?
I've taken a pause from working on my latest book, a repackaging of my usual radical personal responsibility bullshit for 2021. My assistant Renee has been kind enough to print out editor's notes for me to peruse, along with the general paperwork that comes with potentially setting up a business in a new city. With the Lasombra's addition to the Camarilla, more effort will have to go into passing than before.
Passing how?
Sierra and the prince have been clear that we are to make nice and follow Camarilla law, so I've made a recommitment to the mask. Observing all those little things we take for granted, breathing, fidgeting, not dissolving into a tentacled shadow monstrosity, all in service of that precious masquerade.
They do take that whole masquerade and humanity thing pretty seriously.
I'm as two-faced as any good Lasombra, but it's sure a pain in the ass to put on airs just to keep a few meals from getting spooked.
Well, thankfully, the interruption this evening won't require you to dress up in your human skin, as it were. I assume this work takes place in your haven? You don't keep a separate office, right?
I do not. I might not be living here permanently, but for the time being, it'll be good to have a place that I can call my own.
Well, then I hope for everyone's sake that your associate or your retainer or your employee, whoever has the misfortune of delivering this message, has standing permission to bother you when you're in the accounting lair. If not, it's going to be a very tricky moment when you hear a knock on the door.
She is the only person who can interrupt me.
Well, the knock on the door, regardless of whatever relationship you imagine you have with your assistant, it rings of someone who really would rather be somewhere else. It may be the case that Renee has permission to interrupt you when things are important, or if there are instructions that need clarifying, if something of grave consequences comes across that inbox. but no one likes to interrupt their boss, and you're a Lasombra, for God's sakes. It's impossible that this mousy little woman is anything but terrified of you. So the rap on the door is as quiet as possible while still maybe being able to get your attention.
Come in.
Miss Lugassi, I'm terribly sorry to bother you, but there was a call from that number.
Do you mind being a little more specific?
I'm sorry. It's just in the past you mentioned that I shouldn't say her name out loud unless I absolutely had to. But the
Oh,
woman who you
mm, mm, mm.
yes,
I'm giving the universal close your mouth hand. Understood. What does she want?
there's been an incident at the hotel, ma'am, and she said the social club is looking into it, and that she needed you to meet their agent uh, downtown. She gave an address.
I'm gonna stand up, and there's no reason that a vampire would be tired when standing up, but I do stand up with a groan almost dramatically, because this is an inconvenience. I'm not going to deny Sierra what she needs.
No, that would be most unwise.
I'll take any physical notes from Renee and start heading out.
No, your assistant only has an address for you.
Get the car ready, I guess.
Yes, of course, ma'am. She scurries away, much as you would expect a frightened animal to do. In the distance, 40 seconds later, you can hear the car's engine starting.
I get ready to the best of my ability. Not being able to use mirrors is a bit of a pain, but you can sell any look with confidence, so I'll head out.
I have always wondered how Lasombra put on makeup, but I guess that's what the help is for, huh?
I mean, part of my whole unplug, get in touch with nature thing is the I woke up this way look.
You're putting a very interesting spin on the phrase timeless beauty, aren't you?
Oh, yes.
Well, your assistant Renee is ready to chauffeur you just as soon as you are ready to depart. Is there anything you need to take from your home as you go out into the evening?
I don't think so. Renee would have any electronics that were needed, so I just leave the notebook.
Well, Chicago traffic is Chicago traffic, no matter the night, and Renee hasn't been here long enough to learn the right roads or the shortcuts. That said, it's 20 minutes or so from the part of town where you've decided to hole up to the John Hancock Center. Rebecca, Schmendrick, Ivy, you've been given a description of the woman who you'll be waiting for. Likewise, Maya, you can spot a Nosferatu from a million miles away. It won't be that hard to figure out who you're looking for. There's a moment then, as Maya steps out of the car, and the other three get their first look at this new Lasombra, a new face. God willing, this will be the first of many pleasant introductions between you and your new Lasombra city mates. But vampires are predators. The beast loves isolation, and every new face, every new person who knows who and what you are is a risk that the beast is all too keen to remind you of. And those circumstances together create an initial eye contact unlike anything in the human world. As is the case with all frosty diplomatic receptions, someone has to blink. Someone has to be the first to offer an introduction, to extend a hand. Among the four of you, who is that going to be?
I don't hesitate. I walk up to Maya and offer my hand, say, hey, welcome to the city.
I take your hand and I give you the kind of smile that you can kind of hear open. It's warm and practiced.
I don't really pay it much of a mind. I would return the smile, but my mouth is filled with horrifying jagged teeth, and it unsettles everyone. So I just say, I'm Schmendrick, this is Ivy, and this is Rebecca.
Yeah, I mean, out of context, Schmendrick smiling at you might be a hate crime.
Oh dear.
I'll shake any hands offered. It's not obvious unless you're looking for it, but I do smile warmly, but again, with practice. But the handshake is firm.
I would also offer a hand and greet as well. You can call me Rebecca. Pleasure to meet you. Shame it was under these circumstances.
Maya, have you ever met a gangrel before?
I haven't, but I've heard of them, and honestly, I respect the reputation.
Ah. Well, have you heard anything about the Tremere?
Yep.
Oh, I imagine there's a lot less warmth in that smile when it turns to Ivy LaRue.
You ever shake someone's hand and you can tell they're testing you?
I don't know, Ivy, have you?
Only my whole life? I don't.
Well, then please, I've been waiting for this moment. Describe that interaction.
I'm obviously the last one of the group to come up and shake hands, but I'll extend it all that same in that very practiced way that I've had to learn how to shake hands while accepting all of the awards that I've won my whole life. And I'll say, as Schmendrick said, I'm Ivy. And I just give a nice, firm stare directly into her eyes. It's not aggressive, to be clear. It's firm.
Is it?
um not actively aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
It's a fine line. There's an important distinction.
You ever look at two cats staring at each other through a window?
Oh no.
And I thought they'd be worrying about me getting the claws out. Look at these two.
Ba-doom-tsh.
Seeing Ivy bear down on me, I'll casually activate my shadow cloak and allow the shadows generated by the street lighting to grow deeper. A hint at what happens when folks think they can menace me.
Ah. Well, Malenkov never had an opportunity to use the full spectrum of his powers. Ivy, you're studied enough to know that the shadows creeping around Maya's face are anything but natural. I believe the children would say you're getting flexed on. I would like to know how closely Ivy adheres to her strictures about control. Will you make a resolve and insight check for me?
2 successes.
Of course, perfunctory.
Mhm.
Not the first time someone has tried to menace you. You're not going to crumble under a little bit of shadow, but you have learned something about your new friend.
I have. I smile as warmly as one can, and I say, "Oh, that's a neat trick."
Well, with introductions out of the way, I think we need to find a place where we can discuss actual business. I would graciously offer my place for us to speak privately.
That seems acceptable to me. As much as I'd love to see all of you clown car into my little trailer, yeah, probably better we don't.
Right, I can't exactly recommend my haven to many folks around here. One too many bird feathers for the likings of some people.
Schmendrick, how did I not know you lived in a trailer?
It's not actually a trailer, it's more of a storage container.
Oh, 'cause that's better.
Listen, it was cheap. I just arrived. I haven't left yet.
Not all of us live with their parents, Ivy.
Some of us have real jobs.
Oh.
Well, I'm interested to see what happens with that attitude as you formulate a new plan.
Yes, my place is going to be the best option, I think. At least I know it's safe. Without giving the group time to respond, I turn and climb into the car. A few seconds pass before the front window rolls down.
So the three of you watch as Maya returns to her vehicle. Maybe 5 seconds later, the front window of the car rolls down. The driver inside, mousy, dressed in a chauffeur's costume, extends a small slip of paper held between fingers clad in driving gloves.
I am not moving.
I don't think I can take this physically, or else this person's gonna be like, what the fuck is that?
I would stride forward and take the slip from the driver's hand. Thank you. We'll be there as soon as possible.
Well, the driver knows better than to appear polite with you. With the paper gone, her hand returns to the wheel, the window rises, and the vehicle departs. On the slip of paper, an address, nothing more.
I'll look over at the piece of paper in Rebecca's hand and go, huh, that's a thing.
Yeah. How insufferable. It's been like 30 seconds and I'm already dreading this.
Really, I thought you'd be used to it, being more familiar with the courts than I am, but sooner we're done with it, sooner she's out of our hair, no?
Uh, there's an attitude about this one that just does not gel well with me.
Did you miss that animosity there, Rebecca?
Oh no, I noticed it.
Okay.
I just hope the two of you will be able to get along tonight. After all, we've quite the task ahead of us.
I am perfectly capable of getting along with everybody. I think the ball is in her court as far as that's concerned.
Press X to doubt.
I kind of raise an eyebrow at Ivy's statement, but I don't say anything else.
I chuckle a little bit and go, all right, well, let's get into the clown car and head on over to that address.
Shotgun.
All right, then, off to the Schmendrickmobile. Typing the address into a GPS, I presume, and making the drive.
I want to state that I drive perfectly on the speed limit. I make no mistakes. I'm a very cautious driver. One would almost call me granny driver, but I'm not that slow.
Saying that in front of me?
Well, between grandma driving and grandma in the back seat, who I now have to teach what GPS is and why we're using it, it's quite a car ride for me.
Ugh, please, you have eyes in your head. You'll be able to see what's in front of you. You don't need any of one of those, thingamajigs.
I, I'm sorry. Don't you have a hawk famulus so you can get information from higher up? This is that but with satellites. Same thing.
Satellites. Right.
Space. Outer space. Way up there.
Well, I won't pretend to understand it, but if it helps us, it helps us.
That's the funniest reference to a satellite I've ever heard. Just a big bird.
I'm trying to use language she'll understand.
I mean, if I had to explain a satellite to a child, that might be where I start.
Doing a good job.
So Ivy spends her car trip tackling lost causes, while Schmendrick cuts a careful course through the city. As said, it's a short enough drive. Maya, would you do me the honor of describing the building that our coterie arrives at?
My apartment is a former industrial loft that's been converted into residences. It's not so expensive that it's in a hoity-toity part of town. It's actually in a pretty meh to not okay neighborhood. So there is a door code, but I've left Renee outside to let you in because I simply can't do it myself.
No, well, hang on a second, because you skipped over something there. You mean Maya's a gentrifier?
The Lasombra are coming to gentrify Chicago.
Well, having lived in Chicago, I can tell you, they don't need your help. Well, Schmendrick, you're not privy to the garage code, and street parking in Chicago is never pleasant, but with a little bit of ingenuity and a little bit of a walk, you can find your way to the address listed. You know you're there because Renee, your mousy chauffeur, is waiting by the door.
This must be the place.
Start heading in Renee's direction, staring up at the building. Looks nice.
My eyes are immediately drawn to it. It's not to say that my place isn't impressive, but this is something else.
I mean, they're both industrial buildings. I get the appeal for you.
That is a great joke.
Thank you.
Well, as the coterie assembles in front of the building, Renee enters the door code, making an egregious show of covering it up so that it cannot be witnessed by prying eyes. The door buzzes, you enter, and she escorts you up to where Maya keeps her business. She'll open the door for you, let you inside, and at that point she knows better than to stick around. Now then, our expanded coterie. Where is it you plan to start?
I'll graciously point everyone to the sitting area. The loft has a fairly open concept out here. Like most loft spaces, it's all brick and concrete and windows and plenty of plants to take advantage of all that sunlight. There's a hint at some built-in rooms beyond where someone can get away from it during the day. And since there's no real need for a kitchen, most of the area is comfortable couches and chairs, all arranged around an ornate coffee table. It's simple but well appointed, but there aren't any of your common household electronics, so no refrigerator, no telephone, and as a choice, not a lot of direct or overhead lighting. Not even a TV.
If you don't have a television, what do you leave in on the background when you Netflix and chill?
Oh god, I'm such a hipster. I have a record player and quite a collection of nice records that I can listen to while I'm doing other things.
It's certainly something I can appreciate. Looking around, seeing the lack of technology, the modern necessities I can't seem to understand why are necessities, and that touch of life. It's comforting in a way. Last thing I expected when I settled into the haven of a Lasombra.
I have to say, I never once imagined that Maya and Rebecca would be the two with the most in common in this moment.
I'm a big fan of bringing the outdoors in.
That's what Ivy calls it when you invite a gangrel over.
Mm-hmm.
I don't immediately realize it, but something in this room is making my skin crawl.
I lean in and I elbow Schmendrick a little bit and I say, "So, this place, huh?"
My eyes are kind of shifting about the room before I turn back to Ivy. Yeah, it's makes me uncomfortable. Can't figure out why.
There's no electronics.
Oh, holy, you're right.
I always kind of wondered if you guys had to be tapped into the line at all times, so thank you for proving my theory.
I immediately check if I can get Wi-Fi here.
I guess that depends on whether or not you consider the barely DSL strength signal leaking from the apartment next door to be Wi-Fi.
This place is the Dark Ages. I have no idea how people had fun before technology. Well, modern technology.
I don't see what the issue is. You've got quite the lovely haven, if I do say so myself, Maya.
Thank you. Please come in and make yourself comfortable.
I most certainly will.
I'll take a seat. I'm ready to get down to business.
I take my seat very gingerly, kind of like you're at grandma's house and you don't want to mess anything up. This place is just so out of touch with me.
I'll reach over and I'll just gently pat Schmendrick's shoulder. There. It's okay.
Please excuse the mess. I've just moved in and everything is everywhere. And I gesture out to what may be a single open box with a couple books. If you don't mind, I'd like to get down to business. Is there anything we can go off of?
Well, Sierra was good on sending me that information sooner than later, so I can show you the feed of Charles allegedly setting the hotel on fire.
Allegedly?
I don't see anything that directly involves him, just that he was there. And being there, while suspicious, isn't exactly damning evidence.
Innocent until proven guilty and all that.
Is that how that goes?
Of course, unless you see him set the flame, then it's all up in the air.
At this point, I will scroll through my phone a couple times, stand up, and go over to show it to Maya. She gets to watch in full glory Charles carrying something heavy into a room and then leaving that room.
That certainly doesn't look innocent.
It's questionable.
No, it doesn't look good, but we don't have any footage of him actually setting anything. It's all circumstantial. We also don't have a motive. There's nothing that we can think of that would cause Charles to do this. Sierra herself said that she's never interacted with Charles at all.
In my experience, you don't have to interact with someone to make an opinion of them. Do any of you know this Nosferatu?
We've become acquainted with him. I've talked to him, I think, a little more than the others here.
By virtue of being Nosferatu. But to be clear, the night of the vote, the Nosferatu seemed to be for this. So it seems weird to have the opinion that you would be for something and then decide that you were for it just to cause a problem.
People and kindred say plenty of things they don't believe.
Isn't that right, Ivy?
Just like how much I'm enjoying this conversation. All of that aside, we have to find Charles, plain and simple, whether he did or did not do it. On the ride over here, I was thinking, we don't have any footage of him leaving the building. I doubt he's still in it. But Schmendrick, you did that thing where you could look into the cameras when we were looking for Malenkov. Maybe there's cameras somewhere outside that would have seen him.
Yeah, I can do that. The thing about Charles is he's not going to leave the telltale signs of a Lasombra. He's just going to appear like anyone else on the camera.
But he has a distinct look, no?
He does, yeah. Well, we know where his bar is. He's probably not going to be there, but there might be, like, plans, or we get an idea whatever he brought into the hotel with him. That's my first thought.
What about Edith? Would she know anything?
Call it a hunch, but I don't think Edith and Charles walk in the same circles.
Yak and I can scout out his usual haunts, but unless he's out in the open or left his sewer grate open, then I doubt we'll be able to find him from there.
If we have an idea as to where Charles might be, you mentioned a bar? Why don't we work on finding him?
Yeah, the last time we saw him, he was in the basement of this renovated bar.
In that case, lead the way.
Oh, sure thing. Before we head out, though, Ivy, would you mind trying to call Charles?
Oh, Schmendrick.
He likes you.
I'm aware.
He may pick up.
The fine. Fine. Because this is important, I will do it. And I pull out my cell phone and I reluctantly dial Charles's number into it.
Thank you, Ivy.
Mm-hmm.
Watch all this with a wry smile.
The phone rings for 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 15 seconds. Then there's a click. Yeah, it's Charles.
Charles! Hi. It's Ivy. Do you remember me?
Just kidding. Got you with the voicemail trick. Let me know what you want.
Of course he has a fake voicemail. But I would leave one regardless.
What does it say?
Charles, hi. Ivy LaRue. Listen, I've just been thinking about you since, we met up at your bar that one time, and I just thought it would be really cool if you and I could just hang out, just like the two of us, right? Like, no Schmendrick, no Rebecca, that old stick in the mud, just you and me. So if you get this, let me know. I have a fairly boring Saturday ahead of me, and I'd love a little company, is all. And then I hang up. Surely.
Wow, are you trying to
Surely.
seduce him?
Look if there's anything that could get me a call back from Charles, it's that voicemail. If he doesn't call me back after that voicemail, he was not going to call me back anyway.
I don't think he's gonna fall for that.
Men.
Do you have a conflict of interest?
No.
I don't know. It sounds like you and Charles might be pretty close.
Why? I can promise you no conflict of interest. This is funny, though, and I love that Ivy tried that.
Oh, it's wonderful.
Yeah, well, don't say I never did anything for this group.
I don't know who asked it earlier if men are stupid enough to fall for that kind of thing. And the answer is yes, absolutely, we are.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Honestly, respect.
But alas, it does not solve your problem.
Well, on the docket we have go to bar, and after that, I figure if we still have nothing, I can look at security feeds from around the hotel. Shall we go?
No time like the present.
You mentioned an Edith. Would someone fill me in on the way?
Just another Nazi.
Yeah, Edith is a little bit of a mentor right now. She owns the Painted Lady, which is a tattoo parlor. Very fancy lady. Do we want to take my car or your car? I can drive if no one else wants to.
I have a driver.
Yeah, I'm not sure I want to inflict her to me, but yeah, let's leave her out of this if we can.
I'm sure she has other things to deal with anyway. What kind of car do you have?
My car is a Beetle.
Uh-huh. We can take my car.
All right.
I just want to make sure I'm correct here. Maya has offered to let one of these three drive her car.
Yes. Someone else is going to have to drive my car.
Well, dire circumstances call for extreme measures. And to a degree, all of you are a little bit right. You don't know where Charles is. You know where he was. You know that he's been at his bar at some point. You know he was in the hotel at some point. The hotel's not an option right now. With nowhere else to start, might as well look to where he maybe started planning the crime. See if there's any evidence that would suggest your theories are true, which means it's 4 kindred in the elevator down to the garage. I assumed from earlier that Schmendrick was going to be the one driving. Is that true?
I would love to drive.
You ever been behind the wheel of a town car before?
No.
You ever driven a car with heated seats?
No, but that sounds exciting.
What about one that automatically adjusts the mirrors when you sit? Or one that has an electronically adjustable steering column?
No, but now I'm thinking about replacing my Beetle. But it's been with me for so long, so.
I don't know. Rebecca's been around for a while. People keep her. There's something to be said for nostalgia for old things.
That's true. For the moment, I can enjoy the new hotness that is this car, but not replace my reliable.
Different cars for different occasions. But with Schmendrick in the driver's seat, that raises another very important question. Because there's room in the front passenger for one person. I can't imagine that Maya's going to ride in the front seat of her own car. Who's sitting in back with her?
I would climb shotgun so fast.
I've no issues taking the back. Makes for better surveillance.
Rebecca, once again, finding yourself in the role of peacemaker. If you're not keeping the Garu from the vampires, if you're not keeping Malankov from humans, now you're keeping Ivy from Maya. Whew, never a dull day for you.
Maybe I ought to talk to the prince about getting another award for this.
Am I to understand that you think keeping Maya and Ivy from tearing at each other's throats is the same level of service to the city of Chicago as putting Malankov down? I'm going to tell you up front, I don't necessarily disagree.
It really depends on how catty they get tonight.
Oh, man. It's dark days when the gangrel is the least animal-like of people in the vehicle. But hey, we can dream. Maybe they'll be polite at least for a few minutes, or the half hour it takes for you to leave Maya's home and drive north to the bar where you last saw Mr. Dawson. You know how to get there. The drive is simple. You've been there before. The last time that you visited Charles' drinking establishment, it was under renovation. The top floor of the bar had been gutted out, ripped down to the studs. That's no longer the case. When you arrive tonight, the place is booming, overflowing with the bikers, drifters, and other miscreant sorts that make up Charles's clientele base. Not that that's saying much, but from your perch in the parking lot, you see neither hide nor hair of your Nosferatu friend. What then is the plan, gang?
I didn't expect it to be so busy.
Right, it was under construction last time, but maybe that crowd might prove some useful cover if we were to, take a less conventional approach, sneak in through the back.
Charles, he manages the bar, yes? Is there not an office he lurks in?
I mean, the last time we were downstairs, it was a wreck. I don't think he really cares to keep a nice office space.
In fairness, maybe that is his nice office space. Nice is subjective, right?
I suppose so.
Well, as of your last visit, you identified one way down into the basement. You know, if you circle around to the rear of the building, there's a door that will lead you down. If there are other points of entry, you didn't bother to find them.
Probably most prudent to go with what we know.
Precisely. No need to bring in a bunch of mortals into this.
Lead the way.
Plan in mind, I'll step out of the car and crunch across the gravel. As quietly as I can, of course.
I'll get out and follow behind.
Is this an adventure that you're attempting to undertake stealthily?
For my part, I would definitely take this stealthily with so many partying people around.
Well, then you know what comes next.
Would you like me to roll a rouse check?
Yes, please.
I believe that is a hunger gain.
Indeed. Night after night, you call upon the beast for its gifts, and night after night, it makes its demands.
Something to worry about for later, but for right now, it'll have to do.
I'm worried about being sneaky. I know it's a thing that Schmendrick is good at, and Rebecca, and I'm assuming Maya with all of her shadow abilities, but I'm not a naturally sneaky person. So I would probably stay behind and activate Sense the Unseen and keep an eye out just on the off chance that Charles skulks back to the bar while they're inside.
So Schmendrick feels the gnaw of hunger as she disappears from view. Ivy's going to stay in the car. It's safer in here. Rebecca, Maya, are you making any pretense at stealth, or are you just driven to your objective?
Yes, I'm going to try to make a quieter approach. I don't want to draw any more attention tonight.
Very well. Maya, what about you?
I'll follow behind. I can't imagine there's anything suspicious about someone walking around a bar, especially if it's busy.
Fair enough. Well, Rebecca, if you will make a stealth and dexterity check for me.
4 successes.
That's plenty enough to avoid notice as you stalk round to the rear of the bar. Maya, your initial suspicion is correct. People walk around bars all the time. But to whatever degree someone will be asked to remember the strangers who were lurking around the establishment, your face might come to mind more quickly than Rebecca's. That said, when the two of you, and I presume, Schmendrick, you're in a wide arc holding pattern, right? Following along, but staying out of the way.
Yeah, I don't want them tripping over me by accident.
So as the three of you, in a rough collective, circle around and end up in the rear of the building, you see the entrance that two of you used on your last visit, and also a hulking, towering, bear-shaped barrel of a man leaning against the open door that leads into the bar, smoking a cigarette. Rebecca, Schmendrick, you've put some effort into being stealthy. Maya, so far as you're concerned, he just sees you appear around the corner. He gives you a quick once-over, trying to make sense of this woman in this outfit at this bar, but he settles on something less confrontational. Entrance is in the front, miss, and if you're looking for bathrooms, they're inside too.
I don't have time to negotiate with the humans. I'm going to use compel. Your break is over. Go back to work.
Maya issues this command with supernatural authority. And if you were watching close enough, you could see the exact moment where his mind goes from attempting to process the words coming in to blank, empty obedience. The human mind is nothing compared to the will of a vampire, especially the unsuspecting, unprepared human mind. And as if guided by his own thoughts, the man nods. Yeah, I should probably get back to it. He throws half of his cigarette down on the gravel, stamps it out with a boot, and returns inside.
After he leaves, I'm going to make my way to the door and open it.
Half of those things are true. You are, in fact, capable of walking to the door. As for opening it, that would require, as fate would have it, either a key or someone who doesn't need keys.
At this point, just slightly behind them, I will come into view and say, "Why isn't the door open yet?"
I jump a little as Schmendrick makes her appearance. It's, locked. Think that guy had a key on him?
Maybe, but you have me here, so allow me. And I will walk up to the door and start trying to pick the lock.
That would be dexterity and larceny.
That is 3 successes.
I don't know if your father would be proud because you have mastered the arts that criminals use, or disappointed because you have mastered the arts that criminals use?
Listen, I also mastered hacking, and Dad wasn't happy about that either, so it's just one of those guilty things I'm gonna have to live with.
Well, at the very least, I don't know anyone who's going to raise too many alarms about breaking into this particular establishment, and with deft, clawed fingers, Schmendrick disarms the lock. The door swings open to reveal those familiar stairs, untidy and unsafe, and the waiting blackness of the basement. The last time you were here, this space contained little more than the various liquor stocks and assorted detritus that accumulates when operating any business. This time, you hope it holds clues, answers, secrets. Something to point you towards Charles wherever he might be hiding. Something to explain how he managed to perpetrate so heinous a crime without attracting attention from the authorities, mortal and kindred alike. Something to affix a motivation to his actions, and explain how a vampire known more for mischief than malice finds himself topping the prince's most wanted list. I sincerely hope that in the moments to come you'll find what you're looking for. But those answers? That's a story for another night. You've been listening to The All Night Society, an actual play podcast brought to you by Queen's Court Games. If you enjoyed your stay, be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast app. For more content, including exclusive art and audio, follow us on Facebook or Instagram at Queen's Court Games, or on Twitter at Queen's Court RPG.